Okay, start again. So welcome to Arab Culinary Traditions, hosted by Mimi Hassanein. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center. So happy to have so many of you joining us for this delicious discussion about Arab cuisine. We have a wonderful host, Mimi Hassanein. Reading other people's names here. Mimi is a dear friend and community leader in Montgomery County for so many years. And she's just the perfect person to host this discussion. She's also very famous for her baklava, which she'll probably tell us a little about that. Anyway, we are recording this, and then we'll go around and we'll get to the people who are of Arab heritage. We'll start after Mimi says hello and gives a welcome. We'll turn to Lena, who is coming into us from Italy right now after 1 a.m. in the morning. So I will turn it over to my friend and our host, Mimi Hassanein. Take it away.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to have you here with me. I'm so excited to talk with you about my baklava story, because I do have a story behind it. And so I'd like to welcome all of you here today with me. And I'm going to give you a little bit about how did this story about my baklava story started. My daughter comes back to school from school with the back to school night paper. And she said the teacher told her that I have to go. And I looked at her and I said, what did you do wrong? You've only been there a week. What could you possibly have done? Because in my mind, when she told me that
I'll connect here.
I'm sorry.
Someone was talking.
Oh,
Please be sure to mute if you're having other discussions.
yeah. But so anyway, so when I went to back to school night, I met with the teacher, and the teacher was talking about how you volunteer and all that stuff. And I didn't speak any English or anything like that. And I understood that I can volunteer. So I said, after everybody left, I went to her and I said, me want to help, like body language talking. And she said, okay, you can volunteer. I said, me no understand volunteer. She said, you can help. I said, okay, I make good baklava, So she was from Greece. So she was familiar with the baklava. And that's how we connected. All my broken English came after that, because she understood what I was talking about. We were comparing the Egyptian baklava with the Greek baklava, So this is my story about baklava and how I started by baking my baklava with my way into the system. Because at that time, that's the only thing I talk about and I know about. And from there, then I end up by being on the Democratic Central Committee, and I chaired the ESOL committee, and I tried to educate all the parents from ESOL program to be involved in the system and to understand how the system works. Because a lot of us don't understand what the system works, and we leave our kids behind, and then we complain. So I was able, by sharing my story and making them feel you can come in, bake anything, you don't have to be a big speaker to get, into the system. And that was my way into the system, by baking my baklava. So welcome, and I'm so happy to be with everybody. And if everybody will introduce themselves, is that what we're supposed to do?
As we go along, and we're going to start. We'll start off with Lena, who is an old friend from my choir here in Washington D.C., but she's now living in Italy. And tell us where you're from, Lena, originally.
Thank you so much, Lisa, first of all, for suggesting that I do this. And Mimi, thank you so much for hosting. I love the baklava story. That was really adorable. And I hope to taste it one day. I don't know how this will happen.
We'll make it happen.
Yes, inshallah. So I am from Jordan. I've lived in the US. Well, now I live in Italy for school. I've been here for the school year, which is about to end, but I've lived in the US in DC specifically for 13 years, I want to say. And I go back and forth to Jordan very often. Very attached to the culture, to the food. I sang with Lisa in the choir, and we got to sing one piece in Arabic, which was a joy. I don't know if Lisa, you were there for that. Probably that was before your time. Yeah. So I'm excited to be here. I wanted to talk about Jordanian cuisine, and I must say, first of all, that it fits within the larger Shami or Levantine cuisine. So Palestinian, Lebanese, Jordanian, and Syrian, of course. Those 4 countries share very similar cuisine. And of course, you know it, you've all been to Lebanese restaurants, you know, you've seen the shawarma, you've seen the mixed grill. But today I wanted specifically to talk about, and we're lucky to have a Lebanese and a Palestinian, I'm sure they will talk about many of those dishes. But today I wanted to talk about Jordanian, specifically Jordanian cuisine. So I had a couple of slides to share, which I will do right now, just to show you a few pictures. So can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so not this slide. Okay, so I wanted to start with mansaf, which is Jordanian national dish. If you've traveled to Jordan, you've probably heard of it. It's a big plate of rice with lamb that's been cooked in yogurt sauce. So you see here the components, you have the big plate of rice, the pieces of meat on top of it, grilled pine nuts or grilled almonds, and to the side, the second from the left is that yogurt sauce. And it's a dish that's also, you know, consumed in southern Syria and Palestine, but it is Jordan's national dish, and it's been inscribed on UNESCO World Heritage Intangible Heritage List very recently. So the reason this dish came about is because Bedouins, nomads, had, of course, access to milk when the sheep and the goats would have milk, but then they needed a way to conserve it in the months where the sheep were not producing milk. So they fermented and dried the milk, made it yogurt, and dried it, and made those little balls. I wish I have a picture, but imagine just like a round ball of fermented cheese that's very hard, very dry. It looks like a rock. No one understands what it is. But then you put it in water, you leave it, soak it overnight, and then you crush it, and it becomes this delicious sauce that Jordanians say runs in their blood. So that's the dish. If you go to Jordan, you will inevitably taste it. And then as I said, we have all those dishes that are shared in the region. And I'm skipping over all of these to come to dishes that are specific to Jordan. So this dish is called makmoura. I come from the north of Jordan, and this is a dish from my home region. There is a parallel in the Palestinian musakhan, but here it's not bread, it is actually layers of dough that are, you have a layer of dough and then a layer of chicken with onions and so on. And the dough is made of like whole wheat. It's a specific kind of dough, lots of olive oil. It's delicious. I absolutely love it. It's a dish from my hometown. And then another dish that's vegetarian, it's called ka'akil or cha'achil in my northern Jordanian dialect. And you see it here to the right. It is basically balls of omelet-like substance. So we make it with flour, eggs, some lentils. I think I have to ask my mom. And then you drop it in the same yogurt mixture that is used for the mansaf. So you see the similar sauce here. And I wanted to highlight the use of local herbs. So like this called jade or germanders, I guess in English, that you find all around northern Jordan that you use to kind of spice this dish. And then, okay, so I'm Christian, and there are some things that are specific to the way Christians kind of consume food at certain times of the year. And I also wanted to highlight this because, as you know, Christians are a minority, and that's a very nice part of the Middle Eastern heritage to conserve. So cha'achil, for example, are eaten during Lent for Catholics who do not abstain from dairy, whereas Orthodox do. So we do eat this a lot during Lent. There's also gras or akras, which are made all over northern Jordan, southern Syria during Eid. I'm sure also in Palestine, and they can be sweet or savory. So these are pieces of bread that are made, formed or shaped using this wooden mold that you see in the back of the picture. But we in Arab Christians use them. For example, when someone is deceased and you have a funeral, you distribute this bread, and we call it khubz al-rahmah. So you eat it and you say, may he rest in peace. You partake in a bite, and you invoke mercy upon the deceased. And finally is barbara, which is a sweet, so ending on a sweet note, with a dish that is consumed by Christians as well. And the only reason I'm focusing maybe is that because, you know, I wanted to share that very specific part of Northern Jordanian Christian heritage. So barbara is a dish that is a sweet dish of wheat, sweetened with sugar, chickpeas, pomegranates, nuts, raisins, etc., and mixed, and it's consumed for the Feast of Saint Barbara, which is December 4th. I know I've skipped over a lot, but there's so much out there. I just wanted to share things that were specific to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about any other dishes. Over to you.
So Lena, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What spices does your cuisine have in it that's most predominant?
Yeah, so we use we use something called 7 spice, which is, and I think it's also in the entire Middle East. Yeah, so it has a bunch of nutmeg, cardamom, pepper, 7 spices. We use a lot of mint. We use a lot of sage. I'm looking at my spice counter right now. Cumin, sumac, the herbs that, like one of the herbs that I showed you, the jade, is something that we use. Yeah, just what's available locally sometimes. Yeah, sumac is great. I love it.
Great. Thank you, June. Did anyone else have a question for Lena?
Do you cook in Italy? Do you find your spices and all of the ingredients that?
It is hard. I had to go and find, so there's mostly Northern African immigrants in Bologna or Northern Italy where I am right now. So, and the spices are a bit different. So I went to those stores and those butcher shops, but I was finally able to find a couple of Egyptian stores where I could find baharat sab'a, 7 spice, and cumin and all of that. So yeah, I do try to cook a bit, and finding spices hasn't been easy, but my, fellow Middle Easterns have been, there to help me find them.
Yeah, regarding to the dish for Barbara, it is similar to what we had Belila in Egypt, wheat with milk, and you add some other stuff to it. Yeah.
I haven't had it.
Yeah.
Belila, okay.
Belila, yeah.
So it's sweet, you add sugar to it.
It's a sweet, yeah. You find it in, especially with some celebration and so on. Cook the wheat until very soft. Then you add the milk. Then you add the coconuts and you add whatever nuts and all this stuff to it. Yeah.
That sounds delicious. I hope I get the chance to taste it.
Mimi,
Yeah,
you guys know that dish, right? Mimi?
No, I go ahead, Ali. What's the name of that dish?
Belila.
Belila.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very famous Arab dish too. Yeah, we all in Egypt. We also eat it for breakfast, and it's yummy. Yeah.
Really good.
Whereas there's so much similarity among our food in the Arab world. You'll hear all of us talking about different types of food that we eat, but they're similar to each other, So like belila or the baklava or kunafa, I'm sure you've heard about kunafa. I don't know in Jordan, what is the famous dessert that is known in Jordan?
It's the same ones, kunafe, which comes from Naples in Palestine, baklava, which is all over the Eastern Mediterranean. We make Ali. I don't know if that's well known. It's like a bread pudding. Muhallabiya, like the flans. I think it's kind of common in the region, the sweets.
Yes, there is so much similarity, especially when it comes to the dessert. We have so many desserts that we share with each other, but also we have the different type of food, the spicy food and all that kind of food, that it's also similar in the Arab world. So what is a famous dish in Lebanon that you will eat for dinner, for instance, Do you have a special dishes that it's famous, that it's known? Like I know in Egypt, we have the fata, which made out of rice and bread, and then they put the garlic sauce on the top of it. And it's a very famous dish. And it's easy to make and everybody makes it, especially during the holidays. Do you have any special dishes like that in Jordan?
Yeah, so for the holidays, we usually mansaf, the first dish that I showed, is the dish for any occasion, be it sad or happy. For Eid, we eat mansaf, like the family gathers around a big plate of mansaf. We also have the common dishes like maqlube, which is the upside down rice with meat. I'm sure my fellow Levantines will tell you all about it. We have wara inab, wara dawali, which is the grape leaves, stuffed grape leaves. Musakhan, we eat that a lot, of course. The common tabbouleh, we make it at home. And we eat, mjaddara, like the less celebratory dishes we just love to make. This chachil dish, this makmoura, those are the kind of home cuisine. Just sometimes my mom would make like a bamia, like okra or green beans with tomato sauce and some meat and some rice on the side. So, these are like the down-to-earth dishes, which are very common in the region.
We have one very famous dish called molokhia. Do you have that in Jordan?
Yes, of course we do. Yeah, of course. We have a lot of mixity. In Jordan, we have food. There's a project called Jordan, last thing, and then I will move on. I will let someone else speak. So we have a project called Jordan Heritage. Jordan has received a lot of waves of people across the ages. So of course we have East Bank Jordanians, we have Palestinian Jordanians, we have Circassians, Chechens, Druze, Armenians. I'm trying to remember. So all of these populations have left their mark on Jordanian cuisine. So these are considered also parts of the Jordanian cuisine. Like mloukhia, of course, comes from Palestine, but it's eaten and loved, Jordan-wide. We love it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ali, for the question. And any other questions or comments for Lena?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
I would like to hear a little more about the layered dish, the second.
Wait a minute, let me do that. That's Palestinian. Let me do it. She's stealing our food.
It's different. It's not. It's a version. It's a different version of.
The different version. Okay, I thought you meant makluba.
No, that's makmura, makmura.
Namura, okay.
Yeah. It's dough that is awisa. I don't know how to say that. It's made with whole wheat. It's whole wheat and olive oil. I don't think it has any leavening agent. And then it is layered with deboned chicken that's been spiced, and it's cooked in the oven. It's delicious. It's one of my favorite things.
It looked like it had other things in the other layers, and I just was wondering, it looked like there were some vegetables and stuff.
I think it's just the onions and chicken, and then the dough itself might have like شو اسمها حبة البركة السوداء, nigella seeds, I think they're called. Yeah, and sesame, but that's it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your interest. I'm going to bed now. It's like 1:30 in the morning, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. Thank you, Miss Mimi, for having me. I look forward to tasting your baklava. Thank you, everyone who asked any questions. And if you have, if you want to like ask anything else, I'm around later.
Thank you so much for joining us, Lena. So great to see you. Molto grazie, and enjoy your time living in Italy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
sleep. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, Mimi, it looks like up next we have Jamal Najab, who is from Palestine.
Yeah, actually, my father was from Palestine. I was born and raised here. I was born in Arkansas, but of course, living with my father, I know the Palestinian culture and I know the food and everything. I live outside of Washington, D.C. I'm retired, and listening to all this, it takes me back when I was a kid. My father would give my mother a rest, and he would cook on Sunday, and he would put on the records first. And there was one record I remember, An Evening in Beirut, and he would play Feiruz, and he would play Farid Atrash, and the music would be playing, and my father would be rolling grape leaves, with rice, and he would also be making stuffed cabbage, and then he would make the main dish, which is what I thought the lady was asking about, makluba. So let me talk a little bit, because again, the food is, everybody eats a lot of the same food, imlakia, which by the way, in English is called Jew's mellow, which I always found that very interesting. And by the way, we don't say baklava, we say baklawa. That's how, the Greeks, they say it one way, we say it another. But let's talk about makluba. So makluba is a very important dish in Palestine. It's sort of the official dish of Palestine. And it's special occasions, made a lot, but a special occasion, iftar dinner, to break the fast during Ramadan. It's eaten a lot of times then. And what it comprises of is it can be beef, lamb, or chicken. And then you have a vegetable, you can have carrots, or you can have cauliflower or eggplant, and then you have rice. And in the old days, we would fry the vegetables, but now I bake them because it's healthier. And what you would do is you would put a roll of tomatoes, this is how I do it, a roll of sliced tomatoes, the meat, the vegetable after it's been fried or baked, and then the rice. And you cook it. Also, I put a plate on it inside the pan to kind of press it down. And you cook it, and then the big thing for everybody is to gather around in my family, and you flip it. And that's why it's called makluba, upside down, because you flip it over, and then you lift the pot, and if everything's worked right, it will be like a cake, and it will hold together. And I'm very proud of myself. None of mine have ever fallen. They've always stayed together. So I'm very proud of that. But that is one of the main dishes. And like I said, my father was cooking stuffed cabbage. He was cooking eggplant, imlakia, we ate all the time. So a lot of these dishes, like I said, were also from Greater Syria. So that's really the only thing I can tell you about. Oh, the spices. Also in there, because she was talking about the 7 spices, we use cardamom, allspice, cinnamon, cloves, and cumin. is put in the dish, along with the meat and the vegetables and the rice. And it's a very nice dish, and it's delicious. And I wish I could make it for all of you, but I think you're all over the country, aren't you? So it's kind of difficult, and I don't deliver. So that's really, if you have some questions, that's fine, but that's really the main dish in Palestine. I mean, like I said, there's all kinds of dishes. We eat very healthy and we eat. So it's a very important part of the family life.
I'd love to get the recipe.
Oh, okay. You know what I can do? Let me look it up right now online, and I'll send the link. How's that?
Yeah, there is on YouTube. There is a different dishes for makluba, and they are on YouTube's, and I downloaded a couple of them. Yeah.
Okay, I'll send the name. Let me send the proper name, and then I'll, you all can look for that.
Okay, and you can post things in the chat if you find things, and we can also come back to people. But
Right.
thank you so much for sharing, Jamal. It's so interesting. And was your mom Palestinian background as well?
No, my mother is Betty Sue Brown from Warren, Arkansas. But
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
she could be more Palestinian than my father. So, that's she's still a big activist.
Yeah.
So no, they had a very good marriage, and was Muslim and she's Quaker, and we grew up in both religions.
And you live here in the DC area. Most of us are here in the DMV. Silver Spring Town Center is based in Silver Spring. I live in downtown DC. Mimi's in Maryland, and so we're mostly all here, but we do have some special guests tuning in from far away, including my mom, Barbara, in San Diego. Shout out to her. Well, thank you so much, Jamal.
Sure.
Mimi, who do we have next? Are we going to go now to Lebanon and invite June Newman and her son, my colleague here, Jacob Newman, who is Silver Spring Regional Center Director.
Hey everybody, this is a really special night. I get to introduce my mom on a Zoom, and on such a favorite topic. It's much better than the other meeting that I have going, which is importantly talking about rent stabilization, but food and culture first. So I'm not going to dive into specific dishes. I'm going to leave that to the expert. The woman who birthed and raised me. I'll just say a couple of things that I think are relevant to Silver Spring. So for those of you who I haven't met, I do have the privilege and pleasure of serving as the regional director of Silver Spring on behalf of the county executive, and working closely with council and anyone and everyone who lives, works, or plays in Silver Spring. So I think it was last week, we rose one more rank in a national poll to be the third most diverse community in the entire country. And for me, it's a source of pride. My own multiculturalism is a source of pride. I grew up in a house of, my father was born in Germany, as his parents were Holocaust survivors. And my mother was, as she'll tell you, born in Beirut, Lebanon. And so it was
multicultural.
Multicultural, yes. And my wife was born in Guatemala, so my children have like the best food in the world at all times. And they don't eat chicken nuggets and French fries; they eat what we eat. So growing up, food was such an important part of our lives. It was, just same way that my kids are growing up. That's how we grew up. My mother is an amazing cook, a chef, and she brought the world to us, despite working 1-2 jobs. And it's really, you know, some of my fondest memories are around food, walking into my grandmother's house. You know, she was elbows deep in a big batch of tabbouleh, because my mom is one of, you know, 6 brothers and sisters and cousins, just, you know, running around everywhere. And she'd, you know, come greet us and give us a big smooch. And then we'd have tabbouleh, you know, coming out of our ears and, you know, every which way. It also became something that was identifiable, as I've had, you know, the real great fortune to travel quite extensively for professional and personal reasons. So, you know, like being at talking to a suquero, like being in Rio de Janeiro and getting salgados and noticing that there was kibbeh, you know, next to coxinha, and saying like, wait a minute, I had kibbeh, and then finding out that, you know, one of the largest Lebanese populations outside of Lebanon and then, you know, in all of the world is actually, you know, in Brazil. Eating tacos and finding out the connection between Lebanese cuisine and Mexican cuisine. It just, you know, I can kind of go on and on and on, but it's something that's, I think, relatable when we talk about a connector in these divisive times. Food is often, you know, that thing that brings people together. So thank you, Lisa, for having me and my mom here tonight. I'm gonna stop talking because she's got all the goodies and secrets. So June, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jacob. It's wonderful to see you, honey. And thank you, Lisa, for inviting me, and Mimi for being there as well. I will just be very quick. I was born and raised in Beirut, Lebanon, and we emigrated when I was about 9 years old. We went to Caracas, Venezuela, and we took a roundabout route on a ship for over a month to get here. And we landed in Waterbury, Connecticut, where there was a large Lebanese community. My grandmother lived with us for quite some time, and a lot of the recipes were handed down from her and my mother's mother as well. My mother was a fabulous cook. And, you know, I learned how to cook by stirring the onions and putting the spices in. And that's how we all learned, my sisters included. You know, we stir the onions and then came whatever was supposed to come, whether it was the rice or whatever she was making. She made, of course, the usual things, the, you know, the kibbeh and the tabbouleh and the lubia and the rice with the meat and the almonds and or the pine nuts. And they had a wonderful garden outside of their house. And my father it was his pride and joy. He would get his seeds from Lebanon. He would grow Lebanese cucumbers and string beans. And he was so proud of that because that's what they had. We grew up not really having much in the way of a whole lot of expended, you know, money. And so he would go down to the vegetable merchants and he would come home with a crate of artichokes or, you know, 20 pounds of string beans. And we would sit there and we would, you know, snap the beans or take off the artichoke layers. And my mother would make artichokes with a white yogurt sauce, the likes of which, I mean, I'm salivating as I'm thinking about it because that's what would be our main meal, is artichokes with a yogurt sauce over rice with bread, Lebanese bread. She made Lebanese bread, the big, large, you know, loaves of bread. She would make it in a bathtub because raising 6 kids, we ate a ton of bread. We ate bread with everything, with olive oil, with olives. She would press her own olives. And so, you know, that's the rich history that I came from. And she wouldn't make just like, you know, a little pot of grape leaves. She would make a huge pot of grape leaves because it would just last a couple of days. So those are some of the memories that I have of my mother cooking. They would go to the farm and they would get, like a 25-gallon drum of milk so that she can make her own yogurt and labneh and cheese. And she would have it in the refrigerator for the next couple of weeks until they got another batch of milk that she would make. So it was all about the food. And for holidays, we wouldn't have just one thing. We would have kibinaye, which is the kibbe, and it was raw. It was raw meat. We used to eat raw meat in those days. She would have, the baba ganoush and, stuffed grape leaves still on the stove that she would make. It was just one thing after another. She would make lamb and chicken and kibbe, saniya in the pan. She would make tabbouleh. I mean, this is just for one meal, so that we never had just one thing. It was like a conglomeration of everything. And so like for Christmas, no matter where you were in the country, you had to be home for Christmas. So we would travel for days sometimes. When we lived up in Maine, we would travel through snowstorms just to get to Christmas, because she would make pelucheye, she would roast lamb, she would make kibbe and tabbouleh, and it wasn't just our family that came, it was our aunts and uncles, it was our cousins. I mean, the house was just alive with people. And as
There's
you
random neighbors. People would come from all over. It was an opportunity to bring people and break pita. And I just, I remember having pita bread and again relating our culture to other cultures. We used to, on a gas stove, the flame would be there, and I'd walk in, and an uncle would be flipping pita one side, then the other, one side, then the other to warm it up. And when I first came to DC, I was working with a transitional living program for recently arrived immigrants, 16 to 21 years old. A lot of, many kids from Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico. And so what did I walk into one day? The same thing. A 17-year-old kid with a tortilla, flipping it right on the gas stove, heating it up, and you smell that like burnt tortilla walking in. I said, oh my gosh, I'm home at my grandma's house again. So yeah.
So a lot of things do overlap, but we had special things that she would make for us. Yogurt was a big thing in our house. A typical breakfast would consist of cucumbers, olives, yogurt, cheese, and bread. And my father was always quick to tell us that if we didn't like something, just put a little olive oil on it. And so that's what we would do. You would have your yogurt and you would put a little olive oil on it, or the labneh, which is yogurt that we used to squeeze it through these bags to make the labneh, which they sell in a lot of the Lebanese stores. And you'd put a little bit of olive oil on it, and you dip your bread in it, and that's what you had for breakfast. And
now they're selling it in Whole Foods too. So it's amazing the way that foods that were hard to come by now have become so mainstream. And I think relevant to all of the presenters in this conversation, the healthiest food in the world comes from the Middle East, the Middle Eastern diet, whether that be Palestine, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon. I unfortunately have to jump off to this other one. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Lisa for having us. Thank you, Mimi. It's so wonderful to see you. It's been far too long. And of course, thank you, June. I love you. I'll talk to you all soon.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
Jacob.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Any questions for June?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
June, when are we going out for kibinaye?
Oh, is it safe? I don't know. Where would we get the meat?
Oh, I just go to the taverna, no sense in making it at home unless you want to grind it, and I'll come over.
I'm in Rhode Island. You're more than welcome to come to Rhode Island anytime.
You didn't tell us where you were.
I live in Rhode Island, yes. I go to Maryland once or twice a month sometimes. I try to get there once a month, but even when I go down, I still make a lot of the food. You know, Jacob and Peter are very lucky because I'll go down and make Thanksgiving dinner, and I'll make, and I have a beautiful video of my younger son, Peter, teaching his son how to make grape leaves. They're rolling grape leaves. And Charlie was 4 at the time. And it's just wonderful. I came across it recently, and I just kind of chuckled to myself because that's what I want for them to experience that.
Okay, Jamal, you have your hand raised?
I had a question.
Oh,
I just want to tell a story. Sorry to interrupt. We moved to Pittsburgh. My father was a chemical engineer. And so there's a lot of Lebanese there. And so there was a Lebanese shop where you could buy different things. And Dad bought yogurt there. And he loved their yogurt. And he was telling the guy, I really love this yogurt. And now remember, this is like 1975. And the guy, he said, where do you get this yogurt from? He said, we make it here. It's from the culture that my mother brought in 1924.
Yeah.
So they were still making the yogurt.
And my mother had the same yogurt. She was, you hold on to that yogurt, and if you run out of it, you go to your cousin or your, somebody that has it. It's been passed down, and that's what happens.
that's called the mom, right?
The mom, yeah,
The mom.
yeah, it's like the sourdough starter. Somebody always has a sourdough starter.
Or the what are they called? The curds, or the not curds, the bacteria that keeps growing from the yogurt.
The culture?
The cultures. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember the word. Yes, and speaking of moms, my mom in San Diego has a question for you, June.
Yes.
June, hi. You mentioned Lebanese cucumbers. I'm not familiar with them. How different are they from Persian cucumbers?
It's probably the same. They're probably very similar. I know that he used to get seeds from Lebanon for the cucumbers. My father loved his cucumbers.
They're great cucumbers.
Yeah, so he used to get those from Lebanon. He used to send over, whoever was coming, he'd get his beans and his all of his seeds for parsley. Even he would get that. So it was a particular taste to the parsley. My father used to go to these creeks outside of where he lived, and they used to get watercress, because they grow in these creeks with clear running water. So he used to bring home watercress for breakfast. He used to have watercress with yogurt and all of the things that he used to eat. It was amazing. It was all about fresh vegetables and ingredients.
Thank
It was
you.
very, very rich culture.
Very healthy.
Yeah.
Yes, and Ali wrote in the comments that if you are going to eat raw meat, beef, buy the steak or roast and grind the meat yourself just before serving.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I haven't had it in years.
well,
It's a matter of food safety issues. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wouldn't do it. Yeah.
I have a trusted Belgian chef who gets me, they call it filet Americain, which is, it's really steak tartare. Because although I was a vegetarian for many years, I like raw beef, a little bit, and it's got all the spices.
It's in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, somebody mentioned Taverna in DC. Is it still open?
Lebanese Taverna, which is now called Leb Tav, if it's like the more fast food type. It's still around. We're gonna have a get together with everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Next time I come to Maryland, I'll be sure to get in touch with you.
And I highly recommend a restaurant in Tacoma Park called Olive Lounge, owned by I think the man is Palestinian. They have delicious food.
Right.
Okay.
And our
And
wonderful
also,
Congressman Jimmy Raskin also eats there.
Oh,
And
love
and
that guy.
in
Yeah.
Bethesda, they have Bacchus, which is very good. I don't know if you
Oh,
know that. That's
I think
that's
we've
fine.
been there.
That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
I think
Okay,
we've eaten there when my son lived in Bethesda.
great.
Okay, well,
Mimi
any other
is- oh, she
questions?
stepped away. Any other questions for June here? Mimi, did you have a question or comment for June?
We
You're still
cannot hear
muted.
you.
You have to unmute.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. It's really, there's so much similarity on the food between the Egyptian and the Arab other countries. There's so much similarity. That's what I'm finding out. And which is great, you know. We may cook it in a different way, but at the end it tastes almost the same, right?
Right. So I wanted to just ask you, do you use honey or do you use sugar syrup for your baklava?
Oh, no, I use sugar syrup.
Okay,
I make my own syrup. I don't like
Right.
it when I use the honey, so.
yeah, I do the
tastes
same.
better. Yeah.
That's why I like it better. One of the reasons, because Mimi does make the best baklava.
Oh.
Well, you know, I'm gonna have to make some for you.
Wow.
I make a pretty good one
Okay,
too.
then,
We'll have a tasting contest.
we'll have a tasting of baklava then,
We'll
yeah.
hope to see you on one of your upcoming trips. Please join us for the Silver Spring Blues Festival on Saturday, June 17th. And
Oh, okay.
my
I'll have
mom
to
will
ask
be
Jake
here from
about it.
California. Try to
It's my
time it.
birthday.
That's Father's Day weekend.
It's my birthday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Ah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, June. It's really been a
Uh,
pleasure.
It's
getting
been a
acquainted.
pleasure to meet you all and get to know everybody. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Next up, we have Ali Mohammed coming in from
Silver Spring.
Silver Spring. Great.
Yeah.
And your background is Egyptian, like Mimi?
Yes, I'm Egyptian, born in Egypt. I came 1981 as a postdoc in the University of Maryland College Park. I'm still around the area since then. Yeah. By training and degree and everything, I'm a biochemist, and I learned how to cook by watching my sister. I was the only boy. I have 4 sisters and my mother. I see them how to cook. I never cooked when I was in Egypt. I'm spoiled, you know, I'm the only one and everybody cooking for me. When I came to the United States, I learned how to cook by remembering what they used to do. I learned to cook everything from grape leaves with lambs and meat and nice spice onto eggplant and everything else you can imagine. And one thing I like to go tell the group about my wife is she's born in Canada, and she learned how to cook. Margaret, she know how to cook Egyptian food as well as all the Arab food, and we got her this book. I don't know if you see the title. The title, the Middle East Cook, the complete Middle East cookbook. The Middle East Complete Cookbook. Margaret, we're going to type it down for you. They have a chapter for every country. And I think the biggest chapter is Egypt, but has a chapter from Lebanon, chapter from Saudi Arabia, whatever calls a country, and chapter for every country, even for Greece and so on. And it's a very useful book because spice on the back of the book has all the spice mix, how to make your own spice mix. Buharat and other stuff. I found it very, very useful there. My kids grown up like to eat Egyptian food. One of the things Many people around don't like to cook fish. I love to cook fish for many, many ways. And I find it it's very healthy and very reasonable price with that with tomato sauce, not just fries and other stuff. You can make tomato sauce with onion and other material and so on. But according to my father-in-law, the one, Margaret's father, the one was a world traveler, he told me the best dolma he ever ate is the one I make. I don't know how, but I cannot tell anybody how I'll make it because never came the same anytime because I never use the recipes. My wife used a book for the Middle East Complete Cookbook, and I think that Margaret wrote the information there. But for me, my cooking is as a chemist by feelings and mix the spice based what I see need to be done and so on. One thing about our area in Silver Spring, some people don't know that we have so many stores for Mediterranean stores. And on New Hampshire, there is Indus Markets has everything, including Amardine. I like to make Amardine. This one, Amardine is an apricot, dried apricot. You make it as a drink. Also, you can add some starch and some milk and make like what we call it in Egypt, mahalabiya, with milk or amardines or apricot. I did that and lots of people like it. We invite lots of people to visit and they like it. I was surprised. Many people like what we have. The last thing I learned how to do to make kibbeh, and I thank YouTube. I watched a number of videos and I made my own spice and prepare the kibbeh. If you like to do grape leaves, I used to spend an hour and a half wrapping the grape leaves. I got a gadget from Amazon to help you to wrap your own grape leaf very quickly, and all of them the same size. Is about $9 in Amazon. You can buy that and make it easier, very easy for you to prepare your own dolma for wrapping. It saves lots of time. Save me from an hour and a half to 2 hours to me 20 minutes or so for a big pan of stuffed grape leaves. Any questions?
Great. Any comments or questions for Ali from Egypt?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This machine that you make for what is it called on Amazon? Do you remember the name?
Yeah, it's called.
He saved me a lot of time right now. That's very good.
It may have a name somewhere.
There's a bit in here. I can't find the name and put it in the chat for you.
No,
And you put the grape leaves, the leaves in here. Then you put your material and you wrap it like that. Will come out wrapped from the down and the bottom of it.
Huh.
Yeah, but it's very, very useful and very easy to use and save a lot of time.
Shukran. That's very nice.
Yeah, and Margaret maybe found it on the phone in here. Yeah, I did the one in here. Yeah. Yeah, and it's Dolma rolling machine.
Dolma. Okay.
Yeah, Dolma rolling machine. Yeah.
Dolma rolling machine on Amazon. Great.
And it really saves a lots of time.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for that.
Yes.
And if you find a copy of this book, really you will find it very, very interesting because we tried different recipe on it. Everything you can imagine about Middle Eastern cook. I think that Tess Melas, the author, did fantastic job on it. We had it as a gift for my mother-in-law. She actually kept our copy. Then I have 2 sons, each one of them love to cook, and each one of them has copy, and all of us using it heavily. From baklava to kunafa, everything from dessert to regular cookings. Yeah.
And what part of Egypt are you from, Ali?
I born and raised in Tanta, in the middle of the Delta, the most greenest part of all Egypt.
Oh.
Then after I finished middle school, we moved to Cairo. I lived the rest of my life in Cairo, and I went to University of Cairo and got all my degrees, including my PhDs. And I was as professor then at University of Cairo then I came in College Park. Yeah.
Oh, and what do you teach?
Biochemistry and biology.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so the region of Egypt you're from, would you have a similar food tradition as Mimi?
Yeah, I think Egyptian, most of the food are very similar, very rarely to find any difference according there. Some area, like in Upper Egypt, maybe slightly different if you go to a special group, but the most common food are the same across the country.
Yes, yes.
Great. And do you know each other, Mimi and Ali?
No, it's nice to meet you, Ali. We'll have to get together and compare.
Sure, I'll give you my phone number. Do you have a pen? We can type it in here.
Yeah,
you can private message each other.
Okay, I'll send you, Margaret, give you my son number in here, 804. Okay.
We'll do that.
Well, you might not want to do it publicly because this will be a public video.
Welcome to anybody.
What? Sorry, I accidentally muted you. Yeah, I wouldn't put it publicly in the chat. Don't, because this will show up.
Yes.
So you can message, you're muted right now. So message Mimi privately, or I can connect you through email. I'll connect you through email too. You're muted right now. But thank you so much, Ali. That was very good. We'll bring you back for more comments. If who do we have up next? I think we have Mary Kanizer.
Kanizer.
How do you say your name?
Kanizer.
Kanizer, and we know each other through the blues community. As you know, SSTCI does Silver Spring Blues Festival, and Mary is the organizer of the Tinner Hill Festival, which was kind of strictly blues, but now they do roots, Americana, and world music, right? Kind of a wider selection of music.
Yeah, we've added jazz, but we don't have any Middle East music yet.
Middle Eastern.
We haven't added it, and I'd love to see an afternoon of at least somebody doing belly dancing or some Arabic music, drums, something to appeal to my inner soul. So
that will okay, great. Well, go ahead and tell us about your background.
Well, my grandparents, both sides of my family, came from Mount Lebanon. My grandmothers, I know that they also raised silkworms. So I got involved with reading a lot about the silkworms. One of my relatives ended up in Hawaii, and he became one of the biggest manufacturers of the Hawaiian shirt industry. And Shaheen of Honolulu was very famous. And I think, if you have any, they're very collectible and very expensive to buy the vintage shirts. But food-wise, my family, I'm second generation, and we've never stopped cooking. We still do as much as we can, or as I mentioned, the taverna and any of the Middle East markets. I love to go and browse and end up spending more money than I planned on because I'm going to bring something home. So I've learned a lot since I became independent from my parents. But one of my childhood memories was that every Sunday after Mass in the summertime, you would see the Lebanese proceeding down to a back road where we would climb over a barrier and go down into brambles and weeds and everything to pick grape leaves, because nobody ever had enough growing in their backyard. So it was like a gathering, it was like you'd see cars, you'd recognize families, we would stretch out along somebody could make a lot of money if they ever did a pick your own grape leaf section. So there were a lot of people that did grow fruits and vegetables and sold them to the Lebanese from their backyards or front yards. But my mother's favorite thing to do was to gather the grandkids during holidays. And she would have us out there, sitting there at the dining room table, making mamoul. She bought mamoul molds anytime she could find one or was gifted one. So she would have 3 or 4 of the grandkids all making mamoul. It didn't matter if it was, I know mamoul was traditional for certain holidays, but if mom had us in the door, we had a mamoul mold in our hand within probably an hour.
And
we
what
would,
is that? What is mamoul?
mamoul is a pastry. It's like a soft, dough that is filled with walnuts. Some people fill it with dates. Mom filled hers with walnuts or pecans, and then you press the ends of it. You roll it out into a round, and you press the ends together, so you get a rounded cookie that's baked. It's very time consuming, which is why you want a lot of people there to help you. And after it's baked, you usually toss it with or cover it with powdered sugar. I'll grab a mold from the kitchen in a few minutes, but that was my mother's big treat for the family and for friends. And I still do that. I've been known to, stay up 2-3 hours into, late night making it because I know I was going to visit somebody and wanted to take mamoul. And the same thing with baklava. There's never a shortcut in making baklava. It's going to be time consuming, but Lebanese food was very labor intensive. So we gathered a lot of people around when we wanted to roll grape leaves or scoop out squash, kusa. There was always somebody around, and they may not be willing volunteers, but they ended up sitting there at the table, scooping things out. I think a lot of people understand that concept of gathering, the aunts, the cousins, and doing, it's a group effort to make all that food. But there's one thing I put that in the notes I've never seen on a menu, and it's called udnabi, and it's a lamb broth that was thickened with tahini, and in the middle, and after it cooked, and you add chickpeas and kibbe balls, and it was served on rice. And the recipes I found for it describe it as being a winter food, and they used a lot of Seville oranges and lemons to thicken and to flavor the broth. And I guess when they came to America, they didn't have access to all the citrus in these little towns that they lived in, or it was too expensive. So they just did a shortcut and just used bottled lemon juice. But I've never really had it in anybody's home but my mother's. And I rarely see a recipe for it, and never in a restaurant. So if anybody has any experience with arnabi, let me know. I'd love to hear it.
So what exactly is arnabi? Do you know, Mimi, what it is? Or?
You say arnabit? Is that what it is?
Yeah, arnabi is how I found it printed. And
How do you spell it?
let me go back to the notes. AR. Oh, where I found it.
Yeah. No, I'm not really familiar.
Arnabit is basically like the white broccoli type.
Oh, arnabit. Oh, yeah.
No, it's not cauliflower, not
That's
That's
not.
the
Yeah.
cauliflower now.
This-
She's talking
this
about
is-
spice.
No,
Yeah.
no, this is a stew, and it's called arnabi. And I grew up hearing udnabi.
Arnabi,
And
okay.
the recipe
Yeah.
on the internet is, they spell it ARNABIE,
Arnabi.
and you put kibbe balls in it. So I'll post a recipe in the comments.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm not.
Mary,
familiar.
my mother used to make that, and I've never had it here. She used to make that at home, and they used to make it with little kibbe balls, right?
Right.
Yes. Oh, my goodness, you brought back memories.
And the closest I've ever gotten to it was at a restaurant in DC, Mama Aisha's, and they did it with yogurt, but it wasn't.
Yes,
the
my
same.
mother used to make it with yogurt, but it's
Yeah.
not the same.
Not the same. So I'll
Yeah.
find the recipe and post it.
It's a similar like the meatball types, meatball with tomato sauce.
It's yeah, well, they drop the kidney meatballs in it that are hollow and
Uh-huh.
either filled with just butter or pine nuts or something.
Mm.
And it's then by the next day, the kidney balls have started to break down, so it gets even thicker because the betahu is starting to thicken everything.
Mhm.
So it becomes more of a porridge, not just a stew, and it takes
Mhm.
on a different. It just have different attributes the next day.
Mhm.
Mary,
Any
what
questions?
part of Lebanon were they from?
My grandfather's family came from Salima on Mount Lebanon. My mother's family came from Arbania, and some of my other relatives came from Beirut. The families are the Barakats, the Riskallas, and the Bishalanis, which Anton Bishalani was the first Maronite to come to America. So they all arrived here about 1890, late 1890s, and the next 20 years they immigrated. And they kept the food and the music. And like Jamal, I grew up with Evening in Beirut as the background to all that cooking experiences. So, but thank you. Thanks for listening to me. And I loved sharing the stories with you.
Thank you so much, Mary. And we are going to stay in Lebanon and hear from my friend, documentary filmmaker, Ruan Itani. Hi, Ruan. How are you?
Good, thank you. Actually, I have a comment. This is a good segue to follow up because I think I understand. I have a memory now. So I did grow up in Beirut, and my family, they made kibbe arnbiye. And so arnab in Arabic means rabbit, and what I am remembering is like the arnbiya stew that maybe Mary was talking about. There were two versions of kibbe that you put in yogurty soupy sauce, and I don't know if it was goat milk, and the other version would be similar, but instead of it being meat kibbes, it would be like a stuffed doughy, like a little doughy pieces of a kind of one of the Italian pastas, and they stuff them. So maybe that's what the name is coming back to me like that. So maybe that's what it is. So what I thought I could talk about is the memory of that I often have this conversation with a lot of different Lebanese once I moved to the US, where in my family, there were two versions of a home dish that here, I'm gonna put in the text actually, the names. It's like people know mujaddara. Now, sometimes it's spelled differently, like mujaddara, madardara, mujaddara, dardara. So I think people know it more generally as mujaddara, but in my family, at least, or I don't know if that's a Beirut thing, there's a difference between mujaddara and mudardara. Mudardara is what people generally call in the US, like the Lebanese in the US, they call mujaddara. And I actually have other links I can add. Let me see, I'm going to put all of them here at once and people can look at them at your own leisure. So the mudardara is the pieces of lentil and rice that where you see like the pieces, they're boiled, and you have onions that are fried and onions added on top. And it's a kind of a So the dish is basically boiling lentils and adding the rice and salt and onion and oil, pretty much. And then you fry additional onions and then you add them on top. So it's more of a dry grain with rice meal. And you can eat it with either a salad, like a cucumber, tomato type salad, or yogurt. The other version, so what I mentioned is what we called madardara. The mujaddara for us was the one that has the orange or red or yellow lentils. And some of my links, they're not very good links, but just to show you the picture. And so it comes from that orangey lentils. And this one, it's kind of similar, except it's much more like soupy, almost like a soft, almost pudding. And sometimes they will put it in a what do you call that? Like a machine, like a blender machine, and make it soft.
Yeah.
A blender. Thank you.
Blender, yeah.
And and then you can eat it. It's more like for winter. You can eat it with Lebanese pita bread, like by hand, like you can dip like a soup, kind of like this. So that's I wanted to bring that up because a lot of people here, they just say just one word, mujaddara, and to me they were like two different things. So and it sounds like it's maybe parts of the country or where people came from or something like that. So that's it. Thank you for inviting me. And it's interesting.
We have in Egypt, and my wife likes to cook it. We call it shorbat ats. Yeah.
That's different. Shorbat
yeah,
is lentil soup, and that's another thing. That is really a soup made of lentils, and you can add greens or potato or like different other variations. And that's lentil soup. That's shorbat ats. The mujaddara I'm talking about starts, if you look at the links, I don't know if
we're going to have it. Yeah, we have it in here.
Yeah, if you, Lisa, you want to open the one with that's the one that says red lentils, and you can see it's majroush. It's like it's the orange looking like split lentils. So you start with a different ingredient. You're not using the normal brown lentils. That's the main piece that changes it. And also you're adding more water and it's softer and so on, a bit more boiled. So it has a slightly different taste.
Yeah. And sometimes what we do in Egypt, we make something like what you're talking about, type of lentil soup. We mix it with rice and becoming gel, put it in a dish, and becoming like puddings. Then we can eat it with a spoon and put the brown onion on the top of it. Yeah.
Okay, it's the variations on the theme.
Yeah, the variation for the same thing. Yeah, I remember all that many years ago. But my wife loves the lentil, the crushed lentil, and she cooks it a lot, especially with the winter. It's very good to keep you warm.
And so what would you say, Ruan, makes Lebanese food unique, distinctive from other Arab dishes?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I don't think I'm qualified to answer, or I don't think anybody. I think it's a perspective or opinion. I don't think it's a scientific thing. As you heard earlier, our Jordanian, Palestinian colleagues or friends talked about how basically that part of the world is called like the Bilad Sham or the Levantine area. There's all these cultures and history that came back and forth, and there is no culture or language or food that is pure to every single one of them, because there's been influences. I mean, depends, like some areas in Mount Lebanon, they were so remote and high up in the mountains that people had certain types of foods that my ancestors on the shores of the Mediterranean, it's a different experience. So it's really also, I would say, like, it depends on like the weather or the landscape. Are you inland, high up, urban, rural? I think this is where the variations and what crops are available, probably socioeconomic status. I think these, but it's hard otherwise to, and I think I don't want to get into, it becomes a debatable thing. Like if people talk about, like earlier we were talking about the kunafe or some of these desserts. Well, is kunafe, is it Syrian, is it Palestinian, is it, you know, or the hummus with tahine, or all these things, you know, maybe tabbouleh seems like more like Lebanese. I mean, there are dishes that's maybe the Syrians and you know, our neighbor Palestinians and your Jordanians don't consider like their food. So I think tabbouleh comes to mind real quick. I'm sure there are others. I just can't think of them right now.
I think it's also,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. It's the different spices that we all use. So the different spices that we use in the different dishes, that's what makes the difference. But it probably is the same, but the spices that the Lebanese use, the Egyptian use are different. So the spices plays a big role in making the dish taste different. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Sense for image for desserts, but or savory, but also maybe the quantity, kind of like what we talk, you know, is something more dry or more oily, or they have more milk in it, or it's kind of, I think,
texture.
Yeah.
One quick fact: a lentil, the origin is Mediterraneans. That started from ancient Egypt. Actually, they found it in Egyptian tombs. Yeah, through the history. Yeah.
The first lentils were in Egypt.
Yeah, but the origin is the Middle East. Yeah, especially Mediterraneans. Yeah. That's why most of this area and the people eating it. Yeah.
And Jamal has a comment or question for
Yes,
Rick?
I do. I keep raising my hand. I don't know. But one thing that's interesting is like baklava, the thin crust, you know, the layers, it came from Central Asia. So I think originally the Turks went there, the Ottoman Empire, and they grabbed it and brought it back. And, you know, the Ottoman Empire controlled Greece, became Greece. So I think it came from them. The same thing with kanafe. I think kanafe came from the Ottoman Empire as well. But talking about, Rowan was talking about how we adapt. We were all talking about how we adapt. And it reminded me of the story of Gaza after 1948, when the refugees were removed from what was Palestine. They had just limited sources to make food. So what they were getting is they were getting canned goods from the UN, and they would adapt the food that they knew by using whatever they had in those cans. So makluba became very different than what it's made in my father's village. So that was fascinating. So it's always evolving, always changing, concerning the situation or whatever it is. So when I ate it in Gaza, it was very different because they had adapted, and it's spicy. So things adapt, and people, you know, borrow from each other.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Jamal, and thank you to Ruann. Mimi, I think we do. Ruann, there you go.
I just want to say thank you and good night to everybody. I kind of need to get off unless there is a last question for me.
Any final questions for Ruann? Great. Well, thank you so much, Ruann. We'll have to see you again soon, hopefully. So we'll have to have a Lebanese meal. I'm getting very hungry for some Lebanese food.
Have a good night, everybody, and thank you.
Good night.
Nice seeing you, Mimi. Thank you.
Good night.
And
Yeah,
we have someone here who knows about Moroccan food, but I'm not sure if he's going to come on. Joel, are you there? Joel is an anthropologist. He's lived in Morocco.
Masalam, everyone. I would just like to mention that I have not really worked for Shalak. I haven't worked in the Middle East, as we call it, or the Eastern Mediterranean. I spent most of my field work as an anthropologist in the Maghreb. And for me, the food I ate there is very different I mean, even fundamentally different than Middle Eastern food, or what the British call Near Eastern food. And there is a very small Turkish influence compared to the East, because, for example, in Morocco, parts of Algeria, Mauritania, the Ottomans never made it there. They never conquered. They never governed. And so those cultures maintained their Arab Berber characteristics independent of the Eastern Mediterranean. And so it is that they are mainly wheat eaters, wheat, and in the south, in the desert, millet. And their main carbohydrate food, instead of rice, is rice dishes, is couscous made of wheat or millet. And then again, they're unlike Sudan, where the main carbohydrate grain food is sorghum. And so it is that each region, based on its topography and its location near or far away from the equator or near to the sea, has a different cuisine. In fact, in some ways, and this is very unusual to say, some of the spices in Morocco are more similar to Ethiopian spices than they are to the Middle Eastern, Lebanese, and Sharik spices, the Shami. So I think it's worth knowing that you have a very different cuisine in the Western part of the Arab world than you have in the Eastern part. But, and I should add this, the influence, the cultural and cuisine influence of the Middle East is very powerful. So many of the dishes you describe have filtered or diffused from Egypt, let's say from Lebanon, Syria, Palestine into Egypt, and become part of Egyptian, as was mentioned here. And Egypt gave the other way as well. And from Egypt through Libya and through the Mediterranean to Tunis, and partway through Algeria, and then would jump to Morocco. And so you can get these dishes in the urban areas, in the cities of Morocco, but you're not going to get them in the rural areas. And the example I would give is this. Whereas couscous is the main dish in Tunisia, for example, the daily source of their food and of their diet is couscous with vegetables and fish. In Morocco, it's couscous as a celebratory meal, not as a daily meal. And their daily meal is more bread and what you might call a stew, tagine. And I'm sure many of you have heard of tagines. But tagine, yeah. But tagine means something else in the Middle East than it means in Morocco. As I understand it, the word tagine, if you look at the Arabic derivation, it really means something that's roasted or baked. And so it is in Tunis. If you're eating tagine, you're eating a baked good. Whereas if you're eating it in Morocco, it's much more like a stew or roast dish that's made in a clay pot over charcoal. And the clay pot can be buried in the charcoal and thereby become an oven. But they still treat it more like a stew. And it usually has meat because the Moroccans like to eat lamb, beef, chicken, pigeons, and they make that part of their main dish. And their sauces, again, are quite different than the Middle Eastern sauces because of the spicing. So I'd just like to mention that whereas you can get all the Mediterranean vegetables and some of the fruits in the Maghreb, they don't use them the same way. You might say they don't know how, but they are learning by the nature of the World Wide Web and all the different ways people travel and visit other places. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So interesting you say about the Moroccan spices are closer in some ways to the Ethiopian. How did that happen? I know Morocco was such a crossroads, but
I don't understand the origins of it. I mean, there are a lot of mythologies about it. But again, Ethiopian spices are different from, shall we say, Arabian spices.
Right.
And they're different from Sudanese spices. So they're an island of their own. And in a way, Morocco is an island because it's got several mountain ranges and the desert barring it off from the rest of the African mainland. And then it's connected to both the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. One more thing worth mentioning, and I think someone mentioned this, the spicy foods. Something that came over from, shall we say, Latin America and became very, very normal spice in North Africa is red peppers, red pepper spice. And when I say red pepper, I mean the hot ones, the small ones, the ones that put fire in your mouth. And these are very popular all over North Africa, particularly in the Tunis region. They always put it in their food. Sometimes they say it takes the place of meat because we have no meat, so we put the spice in. And secondly, they have a paste that they make out of it with olive oil and other spices called harissa. And I'm sure many of you have seen tubes of marissa or cans of marissa. Harissa you can buy in the stores here.
Yeah.
And put on, I mean, just to give you an example, in the morning, you'll have khubz with zayt for your breakfast, fatur, and then you on the bread, you spread harissa the way we spread jam, and then they eat it that way. Can you imagine that? Thank you.
Yeah, one of the very hot spices actually in the Middle East, the source come from Sudan. The most hottest peppers, the smallest ones, Egyptian get them from Sudan's. It's
So interesting.
But the Sudanese do not have, the rural people at least, do not use them very much. It's along the coast that they have them. Port Sudan, that area.
Yeah,
But in
and
Khartoum, they don't eat it very much.
yeah, I was in Ethiopia and Eritrea, and I spent some time in Addis. I was surprised I'm eating some molokhia and other Egyptian food. And I thought, did you get this one from Egypt? No, we do that for generations.
That's right.
I was surprised to find this stuff down there. It's slightly cooking different than the Egyptians, but it's still the same plant. And the same thing, it's
widespread. And I might add that molokhia came to the Maghreb through Egypt, because I was able to trace that. It wasn't originally part of their diet.
Yeah, let me tell you a funny story about Egyptian molokhia. Sometimes they call it molokhia, coming from Malik, that means king. And there was an Egyptian ruler, maybe 300 or 400 or 500 years ago, maybe one of Mamluks, and very old Egypt. And he loved it, and he forbidden anybody to eat it. He's the only one eat it in the whole country. And he sent his police around to smell, because when you cook it, has a very strong smell because of the what you call it, the garlic, frying garlic and other spice. And anybody found cooking it, they took it, put it in jail, and beat him up. And the day this guy died, every house in Egypt cook it.
They celebrated by cooking it again.
Yeah, by cooking it. You know, he's gone now. Everybody has to eat it. Amy, did you hear about that?
It's a revolutionary dish in Egypt.
Yeah. I cook it here. I find a number of places, and my son born in this country, and they love it.
That's right. And it's very healthy. It's very healthy.
Very rich in iron, yeah.
And I think I should mention one other thing, that for some reason, olive oil has become all over the Mediterranean the main oil, the main vegetable oil, and it's used in many ways in cooking, and people drink it as well as a sort of a laxative and a health food.
Mhm.
So olive oil of various kinds, like Zayt Jadid. You
Yeah,
know, we call virgin olive oil, they call
yeah,
Zayt
yeah.
Jadid.
Yeah.
And that become very important. And each olive grove has its own flavor.
Yeah,
It's not like this highly processed olive oil we get from Italy or Spain.
no, it's different. And in Egypt, actually, they put it, the most of our orchards for olive and olive trees in the northern Egypt on the desert, close to Mediterranean,
Right.
the Mediterranean Sea in this area
Right.
there. And some of the street down there, number of hundreds of years old, still very
Right.
useful there. Yeah.
One other thing in the Maghreb, I don't know if you have this in Fishalik, is that butter is a very important dietary item since they have a lot of cows
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
raise them for dairy purposes.
Yeah.
So you take the butter fat, you put it in a jar, a good old Moroccan jar that's probably derived from Roman jars.
Uh-huh.
Since the Romans were there, of course,
Mhm.
and they bury it.
Mhm.
And that's how it's stored before we had modern storage devices.
Yeah.
And in fact, you hide it because somebody who wants to come and steal things from you looks for those jars and breaks them open and steals it.
Yeah.
But it can be in a jar like that, you might say, maturing for 20 years.
Wow.
And then they call it smin,
Yeah. Salmon.
but they call it smin, and it has very strong odor.
Yeah.
Because it's got butyric acid. If you're a
Yeah.
chemist, you know what I mean.
Yes.
It, which is both very odoriferous and a preservative.
Yeah.
They love it to be poured on top of their dishes because that gives them a very powerful fawa, a very possible.
Yeah. Very nice smell and different flavor. Yeah.
Yeah. The Westerners don't like that smell, but the Moroccans love it.
And now we have it in Egypt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This has been really a great discussion, and thank you so much, everybody, for coming and sharing their story. I am so hungry, and I can't wait to get all together and we can taste all the different food. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you so much, thank you to Mimi Hassanein for hosting, and to all of our friends who shared their cultural traditions. And I will hopefully see all of you sometime soon, and we can break some bread together. Come to our Blues Festival, Saturday, June 17th. And be sure to join us for AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander
In
Culinary
May.
Traditions, Monday, May 22nd. And the registration link is right here. You can just click on that and enter, and then you don't have to worry. Be sure to register yourself. And that's going to be hosted by another friend of mine and Mimi's, Chef Kaimana Chi, who's originally from Hawaii and owns Uncle's Hawaiian Grinds up above Baltimore. It's delicious Hawaiian food. If you want Hawaiian food, you got to drive all the way there. Not like in San Diego. We have a lot of Pacific Islander culture in my hometown of San Diego. But anyway, thank you so much. Special thanks to June.
Thank you, everyone. It was great to see everyone.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Wonderful presentations.
Mary and
Great.
Joel, thank you. Always good to hear from you too, Joel. And Ali.
Thank you. And Mimi, call me when you have some time. Give me a call.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
I'll connect you through email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye. Ma salamat.